So here we are, the end of book 1. Well, not book 1, but book 1. Part 1 seemed like it could end up being really solid, and part 2 nearly bored me 6 feet into the fucking ground. So this is part 3, all bets are off. This could be great, it could be a train wreck. Let's see. Well, we're starting off with a bang, everything's all kicking off. Thank God, I needed something to happen since an entire chapter ago. Even this guy from Omashu seems to be finally getting the fight he's always wanted. We see Aang and Zuko standing atop a cliff watching the battle as the phantoms of their de facto mentors speak in their ears. They both lament their lots in life as Aang winds up to do it, and Zuko sees the visage of his mother behind Roku, who, of course, is her grandfather. If this is all seeming wildly out of left field to you, it's because this is a weird shared dream. None of this is actually happening. A dicey way to start a story off, but we do get some interesting insight into our characters, Zuko especially. Him seeing his mom crying behind Roku is definitely a sign that Zuko is still very torn between his two bloodlines, and thus torn on how he should be ruling as Fire Lord. Even though the show ended, Zuko's story very much hasn't, which I like a lot. Aang is more so just sad he didn't blast the Fire Lord when he had the chance, because now he's faced with an even more impossible decision. Rather than killing the Fire Lord, he's faced with killing his friend. Alright, so we're set up. A dream sequence is a fine way to do that. Sure, good. We're starting off solid. So, back in reality, Aang tries to get the Fire Nation citizens of Yu Dao to evacuate, but the townsfolk are unimpressed, throwing myriad weapons at Aang. But more importantly, at Appa, which Aang would not have to lament over. That would be a death sentence instantly if Appa got hurt. Aang says, I'm about to go clap this axe thrower guy, watch this, but it turns out it's Sneers. What? I thought I was supposed to like Sneers. He's just firing tomahawks willy-nilly off of rooftops? I don't know, man. That's some pretty uncouth behavior. What if you miss and just dome someone on the street? So Corey waltzes in and explains the mindset to Aang. They ain't leaving because this is their home. Kinda reminds me of an episode of my favorite show, actually. Sneers has turned coat and now sides with the, ooh, I don't like throwing around that name even if it is in a good-spirited way. He sides with the combined forces of firebenders and earthbenders of Yu Dao after Corey gave him that ultimatum last time. Aang seems surprised that Sneers is going out with Corey, and I can't for the life of me figure out why. I'm glad Aang is pumped for him, though, kind of the reaction I wish Sokka had to Aang and Katara. Aang finally gets a word in that the Earth King is inbound with a whole-ass army, and the Yu Dao resistance says that we can take him if the Avatar is on our side, wink wink, nudge nudge, and Aang's like, man, you're really gonna put me in this position, huh? Weirdly, the Yu Dao chapter of Aang's fan club shows up, dressed in classic airbender garb. Aang reckons that's pretty neat. Even Katara seems more in her own skin about this, unimpressed, but not at all rattled. Book's shaping up good, seems like. Aang comments on their fake tattoos, and they're like, oh no, these are real tattoos, and Aang's like, what? Those tattoos are sacred to my dead people. You can't just fire them on your face like it's no big deal. You have to be a master airbender to get those. And then the girls are like, yeah, no, to get your tattoos, our members have to master hundreds of airbender-like forms. And Aang's like, oh, you better stop talking. This is the little push that Aang needed to reconfirm his thoughts on the matter. Cultures must stay separate and the decolonization must continue. But he's still looking to prevent a war. We transition to Zuko speaking to someone, alone in his room, reckoning with the position he finds himself in. After spending time with the people of Yu Dao, he wants to protect those people, not his colony. That's his job. But what bothers him, what he's doing right now, sailing an army to Yu Dao, is the exact same thing his father would do. So Zuko questions, do his intentions matter if, at the end of the day, the action is the same? Oh, this is such a breath of fresh air, some actual content. I think this comic is really good so far. We see that Zuko is actually talking to a picture of Iroh, which is nice. We still haven't seen him in the comic yet. Iroh wanted a quiet life after the war, apparently, but I don't know. I still think Zuko would probably seek his counsel before Ozai's, right? I didn't want to bring it up in those chapters because I knew this would be brought up at some point. Does Zuko asking for Ozai's advice even really make sense at all? Would he? Even if Iroh didn't want anything to do with the politicking, I think Zuko knows Iroh would do anything for him, including giving him counsel, and asking for it once in a while doesn't seem like ruining his quiet life to me. It's a bit of a leap to take for the logic of the comic to work, but if we're saying that Zuko really wants to give Iroh that quiet life, I guess that's what we're going with. Fire Lord, we've landed. Here's the Phoenix King helmet for you to wear. Yes, give me the Phoenix King helmet. That will help. Oh, I guess Katara can just, oh, okay, but no, okay, I get it. It kind of makes sense. It's just, okay, waterbenders can do this now. Everyone cool with that? Okay, good. Aang's sitting up here thinking about why the four nations need to be separate. He reckons it's because one will always overpower the other when they come together. Things can never be fair. Katara counters that Guru Patik told him that the separation of the four nations is an illusion, that they're all the same. Aang's like, fuck man, I don't want them to be all the same. I love being an airbender and my culture. I gotta keep them separate or my way of living, and thus the memory of my people is in risk of just fading into the cultural whirlwind. I love this moment of weakness from Aang. We get an insight more than just what he sees as right and wrong as to why he sides the way he does on this matter. And it's it's a little selfish, but at the same time, very understandable. It's not that Aang is just the good guy. He's got some skin in the game here. At least that's the way he sees it, which is the little oomph that I think this conflict needed from his end. Zuko's struggle with this situation has always been really good, but now Aang has that personal twinge that can make it really interesting from his side too. So Katara asks if he feels this way, does that mean he'll keep his promise to Zuko? And he says, yes, I'll do it. I'll murk him. You watch. And then Katara's like, that goes against your people's philosophy. That's the opposite of what you're trying to do. And Aang's like, fuck, I know, there's no right answer. We transition over to Toph's school, and the first pages of this book have been so interesting, you know, I don't even mind so much. It looks like they repurposed Toph's boar armor costume thing from last episode to be a statue out front. I like that. Suki shows up to pick up Sokka and Toph for the war, and she knows they're there because Kunio sent an official complaint about a dirt girl, he's got to stop throwing that one around, and a snow savage, oh god. Toph students are pretty bummed that she's leaving for war, and I can't tell if I actually like the Dark One or if his joke is just the funniest of the three. I don't know, I might be Stockholm syndromed here. Katara and Aang's conversation continues on the rooftop, which I like. I know I whined and cried last issue about nothing happening, but I don't need big fights and explosions to be entertained. I need characters I care about talking about stuff I care about, or them being in interesting situations, which is what this comic is thankfully giving me. Seems like Katara is about to say some really important shit to Aang, but Aang's like, hold up, sorry, this has gotta wait. We got a war to hopefully prevent here. Smellerbee somehow finds herself at the command of the pro-decolonization or anti-colonization, whatever, forces. I don't know how that happened, but she figures Aang hasn't gotten anywhere with words, so now it's time for big earth pillars. Katara and Aang take to kicking some freedom fighter ass. It's been a while. Aang completely shatters this earth pillar with his head and says Toph would have been proud, which is a direct reference to this line.
You've got to face it head on. And when I say head on, I mean like this.
That's the kind of reference I can get behind. It works in the situation, makes sense, and it's kind of veiled. But if you know it's a more direct reference, you like it even more. That's what I'm talking about. Aang saves Smellerbee from pieces of the battering ram, and she's like, thanks for moving me out of the way of the truck as well. And Aang's like, truck? Ha ha! Sokka gives Toph and Sokka the deets on what's going on, and Toph's like, well, what's the plan, Sokka? And Sokka's like, yes, me, the idea guy. Which is another reference to this scene from the drill.
Why are you all looking at me?
You're the idea guy.
So I'm the only one who can ever come up with a plan? That's a lot of pressure.
Which almost works the same as the last reference. It's a little clunkier, but still not bad. We head underground to come up underneath Zuko's army, and Suki lets fly an unknowing direct reference to the drill again. Okay guys, chill with the references. You don't need one per page. You were doing really good with just telling your own story. Have some confidence. So we've commandeered a Fire Nation tank, and Suki takes the opportunity to comment on how lonely Zuko looks, right? I'm not crazy. Suki is on some weird maybe I like Zuko kind of vibe, right? Back in Udao, the wall has been breached and we're at fucking DEFCON 3 over here. This gives a lot of original Jet vibes, honestly, meaning the episode, not the character. The freedom fighters trying to liberate a town from the Fire Nation, but doing it in all the wrong ways. Smellerbee and Longshot were never big characters in the show, but you'd think they would have learned at least a little bit of a lesson from Jet, right? Sneers and Corey walk up, thankfully pretty calmly, and Sneers introduces his girlfriend to the freedom fighters. Smellerbee seems confused for some reason, but Longshot is pumped that his friend has found love. Fuck yeah, Longshot. So we start to actually have a back and forth. The idea here is that what if Udao doesn't have to be either Earth Kingdom or Fire Nation? What if it can be neither, or both, or whatever you want to call it? As long as people can live here peacefully, what does it matter where their parents came from? And then Katara's like, yeah, exactly, that's what I was trying to say earlier. And then this guy's like, kill everyone! And then it all fucking kicks off, doesn't it? Everyone throwing fire and rocks and everything. Oh, we almost had a dialogue there for a second. Aang's like, you don't get it, Smellerbee. I agree with you. I just don't want anyone to get hurt. And then the Earth King's army shows up, and it's like, ooh, I don't know if that's gonna work, Aang. Aang says monkey feathers here, which is something he said in the Firebending Masters when he was slightly exasperated, maybe a little annoyed. Not so much terrified of some horrible shit maybe lining up right in front of him. So the faux airbenders show up, arrows covered in shame. By the way, that's gotta be a really bad day for them. Their permanent tattoos are now never-ending sources of embarrassment. This girl is even wearing a, like, Elder Master medallion, a lot like the best airbender in the world necklace, which I'm sure Aang doesn't appreciate either. But they say the fake airbending army is at Aang's service, which Aang has gotta be like, man, you super don't get my culture, Jesus Christ. General Hao takes to decreeing Udao Earth Kingdom territory again, and Katara's like, why don't you come down here and decree your own shit, Quay, you punk? And the Earth King's like, fuck you, man. Oh yeah, Zuko's here too, by the way. Let's go to war. So Aang thankfully ragdolls the fake airbenders before we meet up with Sokka and Toph. General Hao rocks up and he's like, Aang, we can end this peacefully. All you have to do is kill Zuko. And Aang's like, fuck, I might. Actually, on second thought, let's not. Toph calls Katara Sugar Queen here, which is something she called her way back in the chase.
Look here, Sugar Queen.
So Sokka's plan works. It was to roll through all the tanks and loosen their parts with metal bending, enough for them to fall apart. Seems pretty sweet, but all this does is galvanize the Earth Kingdom into attacking, and Zuko's not just gonna sit there and take it. So Aang's like, alright, Phoenix King helmet wearing guy, you're going down. But Katara stops him again. One of these days, Zuko. Katara finally gets to say what she's been meaning to say to Aang. If Aang thinks the four nations need to be separate, if this is the precedent he's going to set for the post-war world, then what does it mean for them personally? They come from two different cultures. Really, at the heart of this problem is something that their relationship is deeply tied to. And Aang has one of the deepest, most meaningful, oh shit, I never thought about it like that moments in the whole book. Katara says that if Aang really thinks the cultures must be separate, she'll support it, even if it means killing Zuko, even if it means they have to be apart. Aang's like, oh man, I got some thinking to do here now. So Aang summons Roku again, and he starts to tell him about this dream he had, but Roku cuts him off and just says, fulfill your promise. Which is weirdly cold from Roku. Usually he's a pretty understanding, good-natured guy. But Roku explains he feels the need to be cold and detached in this moment, like Aang should be, putting the world before himself, his friends, and even his future family. He even drops the fact that Zuko's his great-grandson, info to which Aang wasn't privy to. Roku's trying to lead by example, saying that he approves of the death of his own family member if it means the world will be better off. Aang needs to be cold and detached right now so he can make the right decision, the one Roku himself couldn't make. Back on the battlefield, Aang's fan club is trying to keep the peace by beating people with sticks. Make peace, combatants! Yeah! The gang figures they're on the right track and take to making sure no one kills each other as well. So Sokka breaks up the duel of the century, Smellerbee versus Sneers. Damn, I know a lot of people were waiting for that one to get a lot of screen time. Oh well. Smellerbee drops that Sneers is dating a lovely young woman who happens to have Fire Nation heritage, is what she says. And Sokka is way more excited for Sneers and Corey than he ever was for Katara and Aang. Man. We get a really weird moment here where Toph has to catch her breath during the battle. Really? Has all that time off really gotten Toph that out of shape? Toph having to catch her breath seems like sacrilege. She's a fucking one-man army. Toph students show up, doing their classic throwing quarters at people move. Everyone's gotta have a signature move. So Katara takes this moment to basically fly up to the Earth Kingdom's balloon to have a chat. Great, no, it's not like the magic system is becoming rapidly less grounded with these leaps in bending, removing limitations you thought each type of bending had, thus opening the fight system and even movement systems using bending to more holes in any given situation. No, it's not like that's happening at all. Katara asks Quay if he's ever even been to Yudao, and Quay's like, no, of course not. Well then how about we go down there and meet the people that have to live with you not liking a little bit of Fire Nation red on your map. The Earth King is like, but it's not safe down there, and Katara's like, no, but whose fault do you think that is? It's all coming to a head now. General Hao is about to throw down with Corey, but Zuko steps in to get his hands dirty as well. This is gonna be it, the High General of the Earth Kingdom and the Fire Lord personally throwing hands. No way there's not a war after this. We zoom in on Aang's Earth tent, and we see a beam of light shoot out of it, a lot like the beam of light that shot out of the iceberg at the start of the show. Aang emerges in his full-on force of nature sphere and flies over to the battlefield. And Zuko's like, now, hold on now, I know how it looks, but Aang doesn't care. He earthbends an enormous chasm between the two armies, which Zuko falls into, and Aang saves him from, meaning that Aang hasn't come to the decision to kill Zuko, obviously. Zuko lets out an Aang, I don't here, and I'm not totally sure what he was going to say. I don't want to die, I don't want my people hurt. Who knows? Aang earthbends a gigantic ring canyon around Yudao, separating it from any land-based invasion. Meanwhile, Katara is literally just flying, so it doesn't matter to her. Man. So after the heat of the moment, everyone lands outside the city walls, and Aang gets to talk to Quay. Aang says that Quay isn't just fighting the Fire Nation. He's fighting everyone. He's fighting a new kind of world, a new way of thinking, where the nations can intermingle and get along. A better world. Quay finally gets over his bullheadedness and decides he'll give Yudao a look to see how people are getting along. And Zuko is so relieved that his decision was right, that his intentions did matter, that he collapses to the ground. But he's fine, right? He's able to rest, finally. He didn't just have a heart attack or something. We rejoin Aang later that night as he reconvenes with Roku. Aang explains that when Roku told him to think about the world, all Aang could do was think about his loved ones and how they fit into that world, into his world. Roku's advice has been invaluable, but this is a new world, one that Roku can't understand. And if Aang's going to lead it, he has to build his own mindset, his own rules. Aang disconnects from Roku and breaks the fire symbol from his necklace, symbolically detaching from Roku, but from the way it's drawn, you get the feeling that he could be severing that connection entirely. Turns out Aang was sitting on top of the Jasmine Dragon, and way, look who's here! Aang took Zuko here to rest after the whole Yudao scramble. So Aang and Zuko finally get to have a talk when they're not so riled up. Aang tells Zuko that it's not going to be Earth Kingdom or Fire Nation, and Zuko seems, I guess, alright with it. He just moves on and brings up their shared dream, which they both seem way more interested in, weirdly. I mean, I get it would be weird to have the exact same dream as someone else, but you guys realize you just started and ended a war in like 3 hours, right? Zuko finally explains explains that when he asked Aang to promise to kill him, he wasn't looking to protect the world. He was looking for Aang to decide what was right and wrong for him. Something he's always struggled with, and now being in the position that he holds, feels the pressure of not knowing even more. That's great. Like I've said before, I'm really glad that Zuko isn't done growing just because the show is over. But this whole conflict and barrier between them being forced on them because Aang decided to promise him that over the course of 3 panels does still kind of sit funny with me. They both take a moment to talk about their flaws to each other, which is a nice change of pace. Through the entire comic, they've both been having these thoughts internally while outwardly displaying the opposite. That everyone else's way of thinking was flawed and that they had to find a way for people to see it their way. But here they speak frankly to each other about their own personal shortcomings, which is a really nice way for them to both tie up their story arcs in this book thematically. We finally get what everyone's been waiting for as well. Zuko brings up the imagery of his mother on that cliff in the shared dream, standing behind Roku. Zuko thinks that maybe finding her a connection to his heritage that isn't so awful, maybe that'll help him. Aang's like, Roku's bloodline? I'm not super about that guy lately, but maybe. We transition to Aang speaking to his fan clubs, pictured sitting beneath a tree, a heavenly glow around him, which is some real serious Buddha imagery. He's even pretty much got the hand placement down. Now, the original show definitely had ties to Buddhism and imagery associated with it, but nothing like this. I don't want to say blatant, but yeah, blatant. It's a really interesting choice. I don't think Avatar really tied itself down so directly to a real-world parallel like this, at least visually. Spiritually, sure, but not like this, just to show it like this. Anyway, Aang explains that if he's going to build this new world, he can't be the only one that's allowed to appreciate the air nomad culture. He'll bring it with him into this new world, so it can live. He'll teach them and everyone else about his people and their way of life. So his fan club will, from now on, be known as the Air Acolytes, which I'm sure the vast majority of you will realize this is the beginning of the Air Acolytes from Korra. Finally, we transition back to Zuko as he speaks to someone off-panel about his failure in getting the information about his mother out of Ozai, who turns out to be Azula, who looks even crazier than ever. Really, they drew her to look completely fucking demented here. Zuko says that the only person who could ever get the info out of Ozai would be her, so he needs her help. Azula sees Ursa in the mirror one more time and ponders what must have happened to her, and the comic ends. Everyone knows at this point how I felt about how they handled Azula's mental decline in the show, and you know what? We'll save this conversation for when there's more Azula stuff to chew on in the next book. So that's the promise. Front to back, it's kind of a roller coaster, quality-wise. This last issue was probably the best this book had to offer. The intrigue stems from our characters' internal struggles, despite our outer conflict being pretty high stakes as well, which is a lot like the original show, so I like that a lot. In this third chapter, the story opens up a lot to Aang, which is nice. I feel like he can definitely take a backseat to Zuko sometimes, because Zuko is just so naturally interesting. But they found a really good angle for him to see things from, and even a really good angle for Katara to reframe the way he thinks about things. I think the resolution was sort of obvious. Everyone just agreeing to leave Yu Dao alone seemed like it was going to be the answer pretty much since the first chapter, but the struggle to getting to that solution and all of the characters growing and being able to realize that through their different hardships is the real story, not whether the war is going to happen or not. So the entire book, parts 1 through 3, I think I liked it more than I remember liking it, at least. I feel like if you just cut out part 2, make that its own spin-off thing, you can read it if you want, but it's over there, separate. I think you've got a really good 2-part book. Does the quality match the show? No, but you're not really going to get much that matches Avatar: The Last Airbender in quality. So overall, yeah, it's fine by me, actually. I thought I'd have a worse time with it, but no, it was pretty good. Next, we got the search for Zuko's mom, though, and I remember that doing weird things with the world spiritually, so we'll see how that one goes. Patreon shoutouts, if you want to see the next 2 parts of the next comic, you can support me on Patreon for just a few bucks. Link, as always, is in the description below the video. Biggest shoutouts of all go to my top patrons. Agent Rhino, who always remembers the 4 important things when leaving the house: phone, wallet, keys, titanium nunchucks. Danger Stranger, who caught 2 bullets traveling different directions at the same time with his teeth. Jack, who somehow looks very fetching in his anaconda skin vest. It would normally clash with the alligator shoes, but he makes it work. Kevin Hall, who won a juggling contest against a man in 0 gravity. Omega Fighter, who guessed exactly how many jelly beans there were in a jar and won a slightly smaller jar of jelly beans. Sean Martin, who put airboat fuel in his car and now he can drive on water. Stephanie Riches, who got into a rap battle with the Deep Blue Robot Rap Edition and only lost because its algorithm doesn't accept slant rhymes. Thomas Lautenbach, who fell off a roof as a kid and discovered he is immune to damage from falling off of roofs, but only roofs, weirdly. Tiago Nascimento, who kicked a body snatcher through a wall, saving the cast of Expendables 3. Varunda, who got home invaded once, but called the guy that was doing it and informed them that they were being home invaded right back. And Whitrow, who was building a bridge across the Atlantic Ocean by themselves, and they're already like 40% done. Check Twitter. And of course, my god overanalyzers, 2 Boots Are Beat, Andrew Watchett, Austin Gallup, Be My Valentine, Braden Shanahan, Cade Stinson, Charles Barnett, Dizzy Payne, Dominic Saint, Distant, Aaron Grace, Glintlock, It's Carton, Jackson, John Ajaka, Justin Fletchall, KT and Den B, Nickel Pickle 582, Nicholas Abbott, Peter Bayron, Phil, Philip Conti, Pogger White, Reese, Rocket Mist, Ross Lung Wagner, Ryan Maxwell, Samuel Vanderplatz, Super Snipper, Yozen, and the Bear Faces sticking around. Next up, Zuko's mom.